First, let's begin together. Take a long, slow, deep breath with me. Breathe in deeply, feeling the cool air fill your lungs, a gentle wave of calm washing over you. And now, breathe out slowly, letting go of the day, letting go of any tension you might be holding in your shoulders, your jaw, your mind. Let it all dissolve with the outward breath. There is nothing else you need to do right now, nowhere else you need to be. Tonight, we embark on a journey not across distant lands, but deep into the heart of sound, and even deeper into the heart of silence. This is a story designed to quiet the noise of the world, to soothe the restless mind, and to guide you effortlessly into a state of profound and peaceful rest. Simply allow my voice to be a gentle melody, and the silence between my words to be a comforting embrace, as we drift into the life of a musician who learned that the most beautiful music is the one that plays when all the notes have faded away. In the bustling heart of the capital city, where the air hummed with the constant noise of commerce and conversation, there lived a young man named Rin. From a very young age, Rin was a prodigy with the shakuhachi, the traditional bamboo flute. His fingers could dance across its 5 simple holes with a speed and precision that left audiences breathless. He could play the most complex and intricate compositions, his melodies soaring through the grand halls of nobles and the crowded courtyards of festivals. Fame came to him easily. People would whisper his name in the streets, calling him the voice of the wind, and his performances were always sold out. Rin took immense pride in his technical mastery. He saw music as a competition, a mountain to be conquered, and he stood confidently at its peak. His life was a whirlwind of performances, applause, and the constant burning desire to be better, faster, more perfect than anyone else. His mind was a flurry of notes, notes of ambition, notes of comparison, notes of pride. Yet, in the quiet moments after the applause had faded away, in the deep of the night, when the city's hum softened to a murmur, Rin felt a strange and hollow emptiness. He had mastered every note, but he could not find the music. He had the world's admiration, but he could not find peace. One evening, after a particularly triumphant performance, a wealthy patron, an old man with eyes that held a quiet depth, approached him. "Your skill is undeniable, young man," the patron said. "You have captured every note. But I once heard a story of a hermit monk, a master named Kensho, who lives deep in the northern mountains. They say he does not play notes at all. They say he plays the silence between them, and that when his flute sounds, the very forest holds its breath to listen." The patron's words were meant as a compliment to a different kind of art, but Rin heard them as a challenge. A hermit monk in the mountains whose music was more profound than his. The idea stung his pride. Fueled by a competitive fire, Rin made a decision. He would find this Master Kensho, and he would play for him. He would show this mountain recluse what true mastery of the shakuhachi sounded like. He packed his finest, most perfectly crafted flute, a beautiful instrument of polished, aged bamboo, and set off on a journey to the north, convinced he was traveling to prove his greatness, not knowing he was actually traveling to lose it. The journey was long and arduous. The bustling city gave way to rolling hills, then to dense forests, and finally to the steep, rugged slopes of the mountains. After weeks of searching and asking for directions in small, remote villages, Rin finally found the path to Master Kensho's hermitage. It was little more than a simple wooden hut nestled in a grove of ancient pine trees, beside a small, clear stream. He found the master sitting on a flat rock outside his hut, not meditating, but simply watching a single leaf drift down the stream. Kensho was an old man, his face a roadmap of wrinkles, but his eyes were clear and bright, holding a stillness that seemed to reflect the ancient calm of the mountain itself. Rin, full of the arrogant confidence of his youth, bowed curtly and, without waiting for an invitation, raised his prized flute to his lips. He poured all of his skill, all of his ambition, all of his pride into his performance. He played his most complex and dazzling piece, a cascade of thousands of notes, a technical marvel designed to overwhelm and impress. When he finished, breathless and triumphant, he looked at the master, expecting awe, perhaps even envy.
Master Kensho remained silent for a long time, his gaze still on the stream. The only sounds were the whisper of the wind in the pines and the gentle gurgle of the water. Finally, he turned his clear eyes to Rin. "You have a great many notes," he said, his voice as soft as moss, "but I hear no music. Your flute is full of your own sound, so there is no room for the sound of the mountain. Go now. Come back to me only when you can play the sound of the wind in these pines." And with that, he turned his attention back to the stream. Rin was stunned, then enraged. He, the celebrated prodigy, dismissed so easily? He wanted to argue, to play again, to prove the old man wrong. But there was a quiet authority in Kensho's stillness that silenced him. Humiliated and confused, Rin retreated down the mountain path. For days, he tried to understand the master's riddle. Play the sound of the wind? He tried to mimic it, creating whooshing, airy sounds with his flute. He tried to compose a piece inspired by it. But everything he played sounded hollow, a cheap imitation. Frustrated, he finally threw his flute down and simply sat on a rock, his heart a storm of failure. And as he sat, defeated and empty, he began to listen. Really listen. Not with the ears of a musician looking for a melody, but with his whole being. He heard the low, deep sigh of the wind as it moved through the thick lower branches of the pine trees. He heard the high, thin whistle it made as it passed through the needles at the very tops. He heard the way it carried the scent of pine and damp earth. He heard the silence that followed a powerful gust. He sat there for days, then weeks, then an entire season, doing nothing but listening. The ambition in his heart slowly quieted, and in its place, a vast, open curiosity began to grow. The world, which had always been a backdrop for his own performance, slowly came into focus. He was no longer the center of the sound. He was a part of it. When he finally picked up his flute again, he did not try to play a song. He simply breathed, one long, slow breath, and a single, clear note emerged, a note that seemed not to come from him, but to rise from the silence of the forest itself, holding within it the whisper of the wind in the pines.
When Rin returned to the hermitage, he did not play his grand piece. He sat before the master and played that single, long, quiet note. Kensho listened, and when the note faded back into silence, he nodded slowly. "You have begun to hear. Now, your next lesson. For the next season, you will play only this one note, nothing else." Rin's heart sank. One note? For months? It seemed like a pointless, mind-numbing exercise. But his first lesson had taught him a sliver of humility. He agreed. The first few weeks were a torment of boredom. He would play the note and his mind would scream for more. It wanted melodies, rhythms, complexity. It wanted to be impressive. He felt like a caged bird, but he persisted. Every day, he would sit and play his one note. And slowly, just as he had learned to listen to the forest, he began to listen to the note itself. He discovered a universe within it. He noticed the subtle way his breath began the sound, the tanjun, the point of emergence from silence. He explored the body of the note, the naka, feeling how the slightest change in his breath could alter its color, its texture, its emotional tone. He became intimate with the yuri, the gentle vibrations within the sound, a living pulse. And he learned to cherish the kiri, the end of the note, the way it dissolved gracefully back into the silence from which it came. That single note became his teacher. It taught him about beginnings and endings. It taught him about subtlety and nuance. Most of all, it taught him about presence. To play that one note with truth, his mind had to be completely there, with his breath, with the bamboo, with the sound. There was no room for past regrets or future ambitions. There was only the living reality of this one, single, sacred note. One afternoon, as Rin was practicing by the stream, a sudden, violent thunderstorm swept down the mountain. A bolt of lightning struck a nearby tree, sending a massive branch crashing down. Rin was unharmed, but when he went to retrieve his flute, which he had set down on a rock, he found it crushed, splintered into a dozen pieces. His prized, perfect instrument, the flute that had brought him so much fame, was destroyed. He gathered the broken pieces, his heart aching with a familiar sense of loss. He had learned not to value his fame, but he still valued his perfect tool. He brought the shattered bamboo to Master Kensho, his despair evident. The master looked at the pieces, then at Rin's face. He said nothing. He simply went into his hut and returned with a crude, simple piece of bamboo. It was uneven, with no polish, and the finger holes looked as if they had been crudely burned into it with a hot poker. It was the humblest-looking flute Rin had ever seen. "Now," Kensho said, handing it to him, "find the music in this." Rin was appalled. This was not an instrument, it was a stick. He tried to play it, but the notes were airy, inconsistent, and out of tune. His old frustration surged back. But then he remembered the lesson of the single note. The music wasn't in the perfection of the instrument. It was in the breath. It was in the listening. He stopped trying to force the crude flute to sound like his old perfect one. Instead, he began to listen to it. He explored its unique, breathy voice. He noticed which notes it could sing clearly, and which it could only whisper. He learned to work with its imperfections, to find the beauty in its raw, earthy tone. He discovered that the flute did not make the music. It was simply a vessel, a conduit through which his breath, his intention, and the silence of the mountain could pass. He learned non-attachment, not by rejecting his love for his old flute, but by finding love for this new, broken one. The music he made with it was not as technically perfect, but it was more honest, more human, and filled with a deep, resonant soul.
Kensho's final lesson for Ren was one of service without an audience. "You have learned to listen to the mountain," the master said one day. "You have learned to listen to a single note. You have learned to listen to an imperfect instrument. Now go and play for those who cannot applaud." He sent Ren deep into the forest to a secluded waterfall and instructed him to play there for an entire year. There would be no one to hear him but the trees, the rocks, the rushing water, and the wild animals. At first, Ren felt a profound loneliness. The musician inside him, a part of him that still craved an audience and a response, felt starved. What was the point of music if no one heard it? He would play, and the only sound that returned was the roar of the waterfall. But he persisted, and a final great transformation took place. He stopped playing for the forest and started playing with it. His flute became another voice in the grand orchestra of nature. The rhythm of his playing merged with the rhythm of the cascading water. The melody answered the call of a distant bird. The silence between his notes became one with the deep listening silence of the ancient trees. He was no longer a performer. He was simply a part of the landscape, breathing and making sound. He had finally let go of the last vestige of his ego, the need for his music to be validated, to be received, to even be heard. He played for the pure, unadulterated joy of creation, a selfless offering of sound to the universe, expecting nothing in return. When Ren finally returned to the hermitage, he was a man transformed. The fire of ambition in his eyes had been replaced by the calm, clear depth of a mountain lake. He and Master Kensho lived together for several more years, not in the traditional roles of master and student, but as two friends sharing the silence. They rarely spoke, for they had no need for words. Their communication was in the shared rhythm of their breath, the way they tended the garden, the way they listened to the wind together. One winter, Master Kensho grew frail. His passing was as quiet and graceful as his life. Ren sat with him, not playing the flute, but simply being present, his steady breath a comforting presence in the room. The master's final teaching was not in words, but in his serene, complete acceptance of his own fading breath, his own final note dissolving back into the great silence. After the master's passing, Ren remained at the hermitage for a long time, the sole keeper of the mountain's stillness. But one day he felt a quiet, gentle pull to return to the world he had left behind so many years ago. It was not a desire for fame or a need to perform. It was a subtle sense of service, a feeling that the silence he had found was not his to hoard, but something to be shared. He journeyed back down the mountain, carrying only the crude, imperfect bamboo flute. He returned to the capital city, but he did not seek out the grand halls or the wealthy patrons. He found his way to the poorest part of the city, a place of sickness and sorrow, where a great plague had left a pall of grief over the community. The air was thick with the sounds of weeping, of fear, of despair. Ren did not preach. He did not offer cures or platitudes. He simply found the central square of the district, sat down on the cold stone, and began to play. He did not play the dazzling, complex pieces of his youth. He played what the mountain had taught him. He played a single, long, clear note that seemed to cut through the noise of sorrow like a beam of light. Then he played the silence that followed. He played the sound of the wind in the pines, a sound of enduring strength. He played the sound of the gurgling stream, a sound of constant, gentle flowing. His music did not erase the people's pain. It did not take away their grief. Instead, it created a space around their sorrow. It was like a gentle hand on a fevered brow. It created a moment of stillness in the midst of their storm, a moment for them to take a single, deep breath. His music was not an answer to their suffering, but a quiet, compassionate presence within it.
People began to gather not to be entertained, but simply to sit in the stillness he created. In the space between his notes, they found a space to feel their own grief without being overwhelmed by it. In the clear, honest tone of his imperfect flute, they heard a reflection of their own imperfect, resilient humanity. Rin became a legend of a different kind. He was no longer the voice of the wind, the technical prodigy. He became known simply as the monk who played silence. He lived out the rest of his days in simple service, traveling not to grand halls, but to hospitals, to slums, to wherever there was suffering. His simple flute not a tool for fame, but a vessel for sharing the peace he had found in the mountains. And so he grew old, his own body becoming as gnarled and weathered as the plum tree, his own breath growing softer and quieter. And one evening, as he sat beneath the moon, he raised the flute to his lips for one last time. He played a single, soft note, a note full of a lifetime of listening, a note of profound gratitude. And as the sound faded, his own final breath faded with it, merging into the great, peaceful, and eternal silence from which all notes and all lives are born.
After Rin's passing, a profound quiet settled over the city, a silence that felt different from his absence. It was a silence filled with the echo of his music, a presence rather than an emptiness. The simple bamboo flute he had played was found resting peacefully beside him, and the people of the district who had come to see him not as a performer but as a part of their shared existence did not know what to do. They had lost their anchor of stillness. In the days that followed, a young girl named Ami, who had often sat closest to Rin during his playing, felt this loss most acutely. Her family had been devastated by the plague, and Rin's music had been the only solace in her world of grief. Driven by a pull she didn't understand, she went to the place where he used to play. She found the crude flute lying there, untouched. With hesitant fingers, she picked it up. It felt warm, as if still holding the gentle breath of the old monk. She had never played an instrument before, but she raised the flute to her lips, closed her eyes, and tried to remember the feeling of his music. She blew softly, but only a clumsy, airy squeak came out. She tried again, her face scrunching in frustration, but the sound was harsh and broken. Tears welled in her eyes. The magic was gone. The peace had died with the master. She sat there for hours, her heart heavy with a new layer of grief. As evening fell, she remembered something Rin had once said to a crying child. "The sound is not in the flute, little one. It is in the breath. Just breathe." Closing her eyes again, Ami stopped trying to make a sound. She simply breathed into the bamboo, a long, slow breath, just as she had breathed while listening to Rin's music. And this time, a note emerged. It was not clear or strong like Rin's, but it was a note, soft, wavering, and deeply honest. It was the sound of her own breath, her own sorrow, her own small existence. It was her truth. From that day on, Ami would go to the square every evening. She would not try to play songs. She would simply sit, breathe into the flute, and play a single, wavering note, followed by a long silence. She was not performing. She was simply continuing the practice, keeping the space of stillness open for herself and for anyone else who needed it. At first, people who passed by were confused. This was not the master's transcendent music. This was the clumsy sound of a child. But soon, a few people began to stop and listen. They heard in her imperfect note something profoundly moving. They heard not a performance, but a genuine act of remembrance and continuation. They heard the vulnerability
of a child trying to hold a space of peace in a world of pain. Her music was not about mastery. It was about effort, about devotion. One by one, others were inspired. An old carpenter who had lost his wife began bringing small wooden stools he had carved, placing them in the square for people to sit on. A woman who ran a small tea stall started bringing warm tea for those who gathered in the cold evenings. A young man who had been a thief before Rin's arrival began lighting lanterns as the sun set, creating a soft, warm glow. They did not speak of it, but they were all, in their own way, playing their own note. The carpenter's note was in the smooth, sanded wood of his stools. The tea seller's note was in the warmth of her cups. The lantern lighter's note was in the gentle flame he offered to the darkness. The square became a silent monastery without walls, a place where the community gathered not to be entertained, but to be together in a shared quiet. They were not listening to a single master musician anymore. They were listening to each other. They were listening to the sound of their collective silence, a music far grander and more profound than even Rin could have produced alone. The legacy Rin left behind was not a collection of melodies or a famous name. It was the quiet, profound understanding that every person has a note to play, a note born of their own breath, their own experience, their own unique service to the world. And that the truest, most beautiful music is not made by a single perfect virtuoso, but by the symphony of many imperfect, honest notes coming together, held and harmonized by the vast, compassionate silence that contains them all. And in that vast collective peace, a peace built not by one master, but by many quiet hearts, you too can now find your final rest for the night. Feel yourself as part of this great symphony. Your own breath, a gentle rhythmic note. Your own heartbeat, a quiet, steady drum. You are not separate from the world. You are a vital part of its music. There is no need to strive for a perfect note, no need to be anything other than what you are right now. Your simple, honest presence is enough. It is more than enough. It is everything. Surrender to the rhythm of your own being. Let the silence between your thoughts grow wider, deeper, more peaceful. The story is over. The day is done. The world is quiet. And all that remains is the gentle, loving embrace of the night, ready to hold you, to heal you, and to carry you into the deep, dreamless stillness where all music begins and ends. Rest now. Your note has been played beautifully. Let the silence take you. Sleep, deeply, profoundly, and peacefully. Sleep.